Hey, Assalamu alaikum, everybody. We're here with Brother Kevin, and he is a convert and will be sharing some of his reflections about Ramadan, inshallah, with us. Brother Kevin, Assalamu alaikum, thank you so much for being here with us.
Walaikum
Um,
salam. Pleasure.
Alhamdulillah. Can you tell us, let's start by you telling us about your first Ramadan. What were some things some things or expectations that you had going in? And maybe you can tell us about what ended up being a reality and what were some surprises for you?
Well, Bismillah, it's sort of an embarrassing story, and that I took Shahada when I was real young after reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I was just another kind of kid living in Kentucky who didn't know any Muslims or have sort of any access to any Islamic education, and so was really bad at it for a really long time. I was one of those unmosqued Muslims after lived in Kentucky till I was about 15. I moved to the DC area and kind of was one of also a great number of what you call kind of unmosqued Muslims in that kind of late 90s era in the DC area. But, believed in Islam in general, but didn't have really any practical understanding of how to do it right. So it wasn't until I actually went to law school and took an Islamic jurisprudence class, which is in 2009, that I actually even learned about the pillars and the necessity of them in Ramadan in particular, which I didn't know even when Ramadan was in the year, kind of before that. But I'd also been dealing with various health problems and a bad back, and was on medications for that, and neck and nerve issues and some other stuff. So I kind of just gave myself a pass in 2010, but then in 2011, it kind of was out of law school, was trying to get my license to practice law, but was kind of stuck without having it for various reasons that maybe get into another time, but sort of not relevant to the Ramadan story. But anyway, I was working for Kinder USA, which is a charity focused on Palestinian children mainly, as a social media coordinator. I kind of fallen in love with social media coming out of the Egyptian Revolution, which it gave me a much greater feeling of connection to the kind of the global ummah in a great number of ways. And so seeing in particular at the time I was following the Libyan revolution and seeing that those folks were fasting while they were in that conflict kind of made me feel ashamed for having not fasted before and for having even neglected it the year before just due to some relatively minor health issues ultimately. So that's 2011 was the first Ramadan when I actually fasted, and my expectations were that it was going to be brutal, and part of the reason I didn't fast in 2010 is because I was terrified of the impact on my body and my health. Didn't think that I could handle it, and it turned out to be not as bad as I thought. It was certainly a trial, but yeah, not as bad as I thought. And ultimately, as far as the physical impact, ultimately the feeling of connection to the Ummah at large, which I had been without for so many years, really warmed my heart and my spirit and gave me a feeling of spiritual strength that I had never known before. And it was a great benefit in my life in a number of ways. Subsequently, I haven't had the same back or neck issues or anything. Like, my general physical health is a lot better than it was back then. And I kind of credit the discipline that I began to cultivate in my first Ramadan.
Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Thank you for sharing that. So you said that when you started fasting, it was a way for you to also connect with the global ummah. Were you able to find that sort of communication connection with the local community at all? What have your experiences been in terms of sharing Ramadan within the local community?
Well, that's in the DC area, at least where I was at the time. The only Muslims who were in my personal sphere were the Black American Muslims who were either unmosqued or in OI, which obviously I'm an Irish American person, and so I'm not allowed in the OI community, and that's part of kind of my separation from the community at large, was that being the main point of connection within my sort of hyper local community. And I at one point almost sort of went to Adams Mosque with Imam Majid, but was a little put off. My parents were both I'd say like sort of nomadic activists, and participated in a lot of civil rights stuff back in the 60s and 70s, and as some other people in my family did. And so like I knew what federal surveillance looked like before I was very old. I was very familiar with all the stories of COINTELPRO and infiltrations and whatnot, and I have my own sort of anxieties about having been potentially entrapped at one point around 2004, 2005, or attempted to be entrapped. Wouldn't ever work on me because I don't do that kind of thing. Couldn't be talked into it, but I was kind of terrified of the local mosque outside of my sort of DC inner city community, and that I kind of saw like me as an outsider and a person with this kind of civil rights background as being a prime target to kind of be, for lack of a better term, sold up the river to the FBI or whoever else. And my mother does a lot of work for Muslim charities as well, so she was a little bit terrified of that happening and advised me to be extraordinarily cautious. And also at the time I was working for Kinder USA, who had to sue the FBI for harassment to get them to stop messing with them so they could do their work in peace, and ultimately did reach a settlement and stop getting harassed so much. But there's always sort of that risk. And so I felt alienated from the sort of suburban mosque community and not safe there. And I was actually alienated from kind of the inner city mosque community. So actually the only iftar that I went to my first year was on Capitol Hill that my mom took me to, because she was lobbying and worked with Zakat Foundation, Islamic Relief, and a lot of other Muslim organizations. And so she got me the invite. And so anyway, to tell the story, I went to that, and we first got there. We broke fast, and the little food table that was there, and kind of got into a conversation with a sister who was there with her young son, who was talking to my mother about the work that she did, and kind of working towards volunteering her young son to help with my mother. And then at a certain point, like Keith Ellison and the ambassadors and all them show up and are up at the stage talking. And actually, Imam Majid came in and was standing there. This is my first sort of Ramadan experience. What I remember of the community was kind of got in between where my mother was and the stage, and ended up kind of encroaching on her space a little bit. And the sister who we had been talking to kind of pulled her hand back and struck him on the shoulder. And he turned around and looked at her, kind of perplexed, and she just sort of made a hand motion of like, why don't you watch where you're stepping? And he realized that he had kind of encroached on my mother's space a little bit, and he turned around, he bowed his head to her and apologized, and got out of her way and gave her kind of personal space. And so that was kind of my first experience with the kind of greater community at an iftar. It was certainly an interesting one, and certainly from my perspective a really endearing one, as I saw women gunshot multiple times in the streets in DC with my own eyes. I know about a lot of violence of women and saw it way too many ways, more than I'd like to remember. It's very, very common in that area, in that community, and in that culture. And to see, Imam Majid being such a big personality and important figure in the community, and also a physically large man, kind of humbling himself and showing deference to not just the sister who struck him, but also to my mother, who was not Muslim her own self, was really a breath of fresh air as far as dignity, and good behavior and appropriate ethical intergender relations. And so, that was the most positive experience of my first Ramadan for sure, and helped me get over my fears about the rest of the broader community, and began to hopefully integrate. Ultimately, I had to move out to California to kind of get a fresh start before I could really immerse myself in the local Muslim community better.
MashaAllah. SubhanAllah. So how have your Ramadan experiences changed over the years? Have you been able to kind of bring in family traditions or cultural traditions into kind of like to tie over what you grew up with to new things that came with Ramadan and Eid celebrations? Are you able to do that, and have you been able to do that?
It's a sort of an interesting question. I can't really put my finger on anything. Like, alhamdulillah, in the last few years, both my siblings, my younger sister and then my younger brother, who I live with, are both taking Shahada, and I certainly made it a lot easier to practice Ramadan with my brother practicing as well. Even before he took Shahada, he started, kind of inching his way into the fast as like a solidarity fast with me for a few years. And that kind of made it a lot easier. But, like I come Eid, I wear like my best Nikes, that's a sneakerhead sort of a guy. And, I might get myself a fresh pair of Nikes to celebrate Eid.
MashaAllah.
I got some in the mail right now. That I'm already looking forward to wearing around my condo because I can't go anywhere. Quarantine, I'm assuming we're going to still be in quarantine come Eid this year. But, we used to, there was a great fried fish place out here, and being originally from Kentucky and also DC area, we're big on the fried fish. So we'd try to have big fried fish iftars and,
Nice.
Yeah, that kind of thing. But, it's the present exchange is sort of one thing, but I think just taking the opportunity to try to give gifts to neighbors or whoever else and do charity and that kind of thing, which, kind of coming from that civil rights background, we're always sort of taught to be good citizens sort of in my family, good members of the broader community. But so sort of taking the opportunity of Ramadan and Eid to dig deeper and to give more, whether it's financially if you have the opportunity or through some kind of service, is really the way. I think that the best way that I say I channeled sort of my personal familial culture and history into the practice of Ramadan.
MashaAllah. Do you have a favorite Ramadan memory that you can think of?
Definitely the iftar. The first one I went to with Imam Majid was the one that stands out in my mind the most because it was kind of a transformative experience. As far as that goes, also, having my brother take Shahada, just the first Ramadan that I had with him, where he was practicing last year, and we had to pray together, honestly, is my favorite. My favorite memory was, praying with my brother in Ramadan.
SubhanAllah. That's amazing, and may Allah guide all of our loved ones to Islam, inshallah. I mean.
Inshallah.
What do you look most forward to as Ramadan approaches?
Well, sort of generally, and I guess probably this year as well, it's that for me, kind of toward the end, you get that I call like Ramadan strong. In the beginning, the coffee headaches and you're tired and feel a little depleted. But sort of like they say with marathon runners, you get into it at a certain point, which, and I only know this from hearing it. I'm not a marathon runner, but or haven't been in a long time at least. You get that second wind, and you find a strength sort of that you didn't know was there, and that definitely tends to happen in Ramadan for me, kind of toward the second half, and yeah, that's definitely sort of my favorite part, like getting that feeling of unlocking inner strength that I hadn't been able to access before, and figuring out what the best application of it would be and how to sort of apply it and use it to kind of grow my life. But it always kind of feels sort of miraculous when that happens, and really invigorating in a number of ways. And so that's looking forward to that Ramadan second wind, that Ramadan strong feeling again.
Mashallah. Mashallah. So I have one more question. You've experienced several Ramadans, and this video is for everybody, for our community at large, but there's a lot of new Muslims out there who might be experiencing their first or second Ramadans, and I was hoping that you could share some advice or some thoughts that you wanted to share with them in particular.
Well, yeah, I suppose first, say salams to all my convert sisters and brothers out there going through it to start. I really appreciate having you all as a part of our greater family. Love seeing you at the mosque when I have the opportunity and all of that. But inshallah, maybe next year.
Inshallah.
It's now we're all in quarantine, which I know is really devastating to a lot of the kind of born Muslim community, but kind of to us converts, many of us at least have been isolated in our Islam for a long time, and so that part's no big deal, nothing new. Not missing out on as much, and I get to focus. I recently watched a great cookbook from Sheikh Rami at MCC last year, which any of you can find on the YouTube channel, which I highly recommend. It's been great for the quarantine for sure, where he talked about Ramadan is supposed to be the month of the fast, not the month of the feast, and really kind of embracing the hardship of it, which also I watched the Ramadan prep video on the Khalil Center's website. I highly recommend. There's a little bit in there about just humans generally are adaptive creatures and adaptive people, and the hardship gets kind of like lifting weights, but for your conscious and your spirit, and that you put yourself through it, and you will sort of gain strength through it, and not being distracted by a bunch of iftars and community invites and social obligations, and being able to really hone in on your relationship with Allah and focusing on that in whatever way makes the most sense for you. Personally, and particularly in quarantine, I found a lot of these YouTube videos, like Yakin also has a great resource as far as lectures to watch. They're easily digestible for new Muslims, I think. In addition to MCC, in addition to Khalil Center, but I recommend mainly just I guess stay hydrated. You probably heard that before, but we won't want to focus on that. The hunger part really isn't so bad. It's the dehydration that can get you messed up. Chia seeds are a great thing to have for suhoor, because they kind of release the hydration throughout the day as you digest them, rather than just sort of the water all at once. So kind of always like to have chia seed infused smoothies in the morning, which tends to make it a lot easier. But yeah, don't worry about like having to get as much food as you normally would and just cramming it in the before or the after. Like, just go ahead and embrace that you're going to be a little bit hungry, that you're going to be a little bit thirsty, and that's the point. And it's okay. You can handle it. You might not think that you can, but humans are resilient. And you look around the global ummah, there's so many of us who don't even get to eat meat ever. Even much less sort of even sometimes for Ramadan, but that's it. So you can handle more than you think you can, and just be patient with yourself, be merciful with yourself. I always would tell my siblings that, like, I'm a Muslim, not a masochist. So, if you get to a point where you feel like you're negatively impacting your health, like, just go ahead and give yourself a break. Take a day if you need to. You can always make it up later. It's better to ultimately mind your health. It's between you and Allah ultimately, and don't let yourself feel peer pressured or whatever into hurting yourself. But at the same time, just remember that through hardship comes ease, and that's part of the whole point, is to put yourself through something so that you can kind of gain strength and think about it like spiritual and psychological exercise, and kind of embrace the struggle, and inshallah you'll get the rewards. And just remember that second wind, that Ramadan strong is coming, and it's there for you.
MashaAllah, that was amazing advice. Thank you so much, Brother Kevin. Do you have anything else to say before we wrap it up?
Can't really think of anything. Just this is going to be a wild one, and inshallah, I'm looking forward to. I was really looking forward to praying at MCC this year. Would have been my, normally I go to Lighthouse, but inshallah, next year I'll get to do Ramadan at MCC.
Inshallah, Allah is the best of planners. So may Allah help us to make the most of Ramadan as it is this year. Ameen. Thank you so much, Brother Kevin. This is part of your private and personal story, and we really appreciate you sharing it with us.
I appreciate the opportunity to be able to contribute to the community however I can. So, thanks for allowing me the chance to get my non-financial zakat in. As like so many others, I know we're going to be struggling financially with what's going on in the world right now. I may not be able to do all that we'd like to do with our zakat this year. So finding ways to give outside of financial means is really a blessing, and I'm grateful that MCC gave me the opportunity. Inshallah, there'll be more in the months to come.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.